release. But today, again, we will just touch on certain things and how these capabilities look like, what they're all about. Now, why upgrade? Why upgrade at all? I think there's the old saying that never touch a running system, but at certain stages, it is required to do upgrades. It's a world we are living in, especially also nowadays with all the operating system. There's quite a push to always keep to the latest level to ensure security, to enable the latest features and functions. So one of the main reasons is really the maintenance itself. Ideally, it's the easiest thing if you have a supported release level, which is in main maintenance and main maintenance, because then all the support, everything you get is included in the price. You raise a ticket, there's no additional cost on top of that. The other thing, especially if you have implemented SAP S4HANA in the early stages, the compatibility packages are still running out at the end of December 2025. So the latest releases, you will see we have already embedded a lot of capabilities which we are going to replace into our solution. So now it's also then the time to take a look at these things, and maybe while you need to upgrade, also look at how can I move from the old legacy compatibility packages to the new capabilities. Of course, we also hope that we have introduced enough improvements to also add value to the upgrade itself, to not just make it a technical process, but also to really help your business to run better, more efficient, to keep focus on the challenges in your business rather than trying to keep it functioning and all the little things which hopefully are being automated. So this is something which we, of course, always have available on our what's new information, the blogs, and everything else which we are making available. We have also embedded a lot of products over the past few years. Transport management is one of these solutions, which then allows, again, to replace some of the compatibility packages, but hopefully we also added some interesting features and functions to you. Another very important factor is the user experience. We did invest quite a bit into SAP Fiori, into the user experience. We have made changes to that, how people can use it. Hopefully these changes also make it even simpler, easier for people to use the solution. And as you can see, we have increased the number of Fiori apps continuously over the past few years. From a technical perspective, also there we are not standing still. We are improving the technology underneath it in terms of performance. Here we're looking again also on some legacy solutions with SAP GUI for HTML. So we have made improvements on that side as well. But of course, also focusing on our new SAP Fiori apps and also ensuring that the technology improves there, the performance improves. So it makes it easier and quicker to use. We've added more new mobile capabilities. And we are trying and building in more and more innovational scenarios. So we are using the machine learning parts. We are automating more processes. And we have added some other digital capabilities like chatbots and other things, which should help you to run your business. Last but not least, also the database has been improved. So if you are sitting on an SAP S4HANA 1511, 1610 or so release, it would also be important to upgrade then to SAP HANA 2.0 because that is the latest database and it's required to then change the database to the latest version in order to upgrade. So we're now looking a little bit at some of the new capabilities. Again, here we are just touching on some of the highlights. My colleagues will then go a little bit deeper in each area and present some of these capabilities in more detail. But before we go into those, we will have a look a little bit at the bigger picture, what we have introduced, what we are talking about. At the top, we are now talking about our business network. So that includes all the networks we have in our portfolio, be it for travel, be it for procurement, be it for assets. So all that is under our business network part. It's quite important for you in case you want to integrate with your suppliers, with your buyers, to really leverage these capabilities. So it's really across everything. The experience management is, of course, something which we see as quite important. Again, not just capture all the hard facts where I know that I have the price for an item, but also the soft facts, because at the end of the day, we are humans. We want to know how everybody is interacting with each other so that we can improve, we can better communicate with each other. And we want to understand where challenges are in our business, in communicating, exchanging with other people, or also within our own organization. While we have now our application, make no mistake, SAP S4HANA is really the foundation, the core solution for us. This is our intelligence suite, and everything else is basically built to connect to this core solution and expand the capability. The same is then true when we start talking with our industry cloud. Our industry cloud really requires SAP S4HANA to really leverage and work properly. So it's not just industry cloud, it's really SAP S4HANA and our industry cloud solutions to really support your business requirements. We're living in a world where sustainability becomes more and more important. We can see that in the automotive industry, and that countries are getting quicker to say that when the last fuel engine really should be sold via all the dealers. So we are in a situation where things really are more important to look at the processes in the organization, to maybe change also the products we are offering or we are consuming. So sustainability management really underpins and helps you and your business to reach those goals. And at the bottom, we have our business technology platform to really allow you to extend where you need additional capabilities, maybe also where you need to interact with other parties, stakeholders, to really give you a platform in terms of keeping your core also clean and still consume the latest innovations and really help your business moving forward. Now, I hope this one is not really new. This is something we are talking about for the past few years. The key one is really around the digital age, the user experience. That's something you will see in the next few slides coming up more and more often. SAP Fiori is really here our core solution to help you run your business, to consume it, to run the latest technologies. Automation is another key driver. Again, it started a while ago, but it's still something more automation to be more important, to focus on key parts of your business where really people make the difference, and otherwise have machine learning, AI, predictive analytics to help you and your business users. And at the same time, it's really about evaluating what to do, how to best build out your business, how to use the latest innovations. Things are changing more and more and quicker than any time before. With our key ERP, our intelligent ERP solution, again, we are covering the key parts around finance, procurement, the enterprise portfolio and project management side, supply chain, sales, and also development and design. So this is our core solution to run the core processes and then extend these over time. So this slide is a little bit showing what we have done over the past years. It's an illustration. It does not show all the bells and whistles, but it's showing you a little bit on what we have done over the past few years. So this is with our first release, SAP S4HANA 1511. We have built a foundation. We introduced some parts of Fiori, which were already available before. We introduced the business partner and embedded analytics as a core starting point, and then started to move some of the capabilities from our other solutions, in this case here SAP SRM, into the core. So with the next release, we continued that process. We started to move, in this case, more capabilities from SAP supply chain and manufacturing into our core solution. We started also to focus more on a consistent user experience. At the same time, we introduced in the cross capabilities, search capabilities. And again, this is just showing that we have built more and more capabilities over the past few releases. Again, with overview pages, we introduced on the Fiori side, we moved more capabilities, in this case from SAP SCM and CRM into SAP S4HANA, and we started also to build in predictive analytics. And as you can see, with each release, we started to build out more capabilities. We are now also then introduced at one stage with 1909 the concept of hyperscalers, so that you have the choice to get also your system hosted, managed by one of the hyperscalers. And we introduced more capabilities. As you can see here on the slide, again, we have built up more capabilities, and that's what we are planning to do also moving forward. So this is the overview slide for the capabilities which we have introduced with SAP S4HANA 2020. In the dark gray area, these are the capabilities which are sitting in SAP S4HANA. They're covered by the standard core license. The light gray, this usually means that there are additional licenses required based on the standard contract. And then on the white side, where we have Suite LOB solutions, that's where capabilities are sitting outside of SAP S4HANA and they require additional licenses. So here we introduced, again, you can see some of the new innovations we have introduced with SAP S4HANA 2020. And here you can see highlighted in dark gray some of these new capabilities we have introduced with preliminary billing in the sales side, with situation handling for physical inventory in the supply chain area, or in-house repair processes in the service area. Now, this is something we are building out now here with the light gray area, where you can see new capabilities being added for example, production planning optimizer or predictive MRP capabilities. And then last but not least, here our core Suite LOB solutions with order to cash, where we have performance dashboards now, where we have a new PLM platform available, or machine learning services for ticket intelligence. As I mentioned up front, a colleague will go a little more into details about RISE with SAP S4HANA. It is a new offering we are now bringing to the market, to you, our customers, trying to help you to make your journey with SAP easier, simpler. It is an offering for you as existing customer, but it is of course also trying to focus on new customers looking at taking advantage of SAP S4HANA. So let's have a quick look at some of the S4HANA functional delta. And this is just a little bit illustrating what I've shown before on the other slide. Again, we have started to make changes to the embedded solution, something we have built up. We have now SAP HANA 2.0, which is required for our latest releases. We have made changes to the CDS views. We have extended the integration. We have modernized it. We're extending it, and we keep, of course, extending it. We added more embedded analytical reports. We're improving functional side, what we have in there, adding new features and functions. In order to consume it and to enable these capabilities, SAP Fiori plays a key role. So it's really something, if you have not done it, something you should take a closer look at. At the same time, the integration with our cloud products, the features and functions we have inside of S4 is being extended with the cloud solutions. That's something also we are building up. So as you can see, we're building up the foundation. We are building more and more capabilities into the solution. Here are some of the finance highlights. So some of the capabilities we have added into the solution since we started providing SAP S4HANA. We have, for example, added predictive finance. We have focused on real spend visibility. We are also looking, as you saw on the slide before, the leveraging the SAP Analytics Cloud for analytics and planning capabilities. The same around commodity management, something we have added over the past few releases. In the manufacturing side, we have added capabilities around MRP Live. We have added the capabilities around demand-driven MRP. Also there in connection with predictive MRP, again, trying to build in some smart capabilities, features and functions into the system. We have embedded EWM and TM into the solution. So they are part now of the solution itself. In the procurement side, we have provided innovations, for example, image-based buying as an example that we are trying to look at how to leverage the latest technologies. We have embedded service procurement with Fieldglass, our cloud solution. We have added machine learning for contracts and proposals so that you get information proactively from the system. We have machine learning for predictive purchase order delays, again, leveraging some of the new capabilities which are becoming available. The same now in the sales area, we have added more capabilities around the service core with moving SAP CRM into the solution. We have delivery prediction, which we added, and our integration with SAP C4HANA has been built out. Again, I'm just touching here on a few things. My colleagues will go then into the details and describe that a little bit closer. With this one, I'm handing over to my colleague, Thomas Chapo. Thomas, over to you.
Thank you very much, Hendrik, and a warm welcome also from my side. My name is Thomas Trappo. I'm also part of the S4HANA Regional Implementation Group in Asia Pacific, and my focus is on technology topics. I'm also leading our technical community within our team. So I will go into a couple of more technical details that are important for you to know with our latest releases of S4HANA. So first of all, let's get started with intelligent technologies and user experience. Talking about intelligent technologies, it is very important to talk about our business technology platform. Our business technology platform is basically an assembly of our technical tooling that includes the database HANA itself, the database management tools that come with it. It also comes with analytics capabilities, and it also comes with extension capabilities, what you used to know as the SAP Cloud Platform, where you can integrate in an easier manner and flexible manner. Now, talking about this, when we look into intelligent technologies, there are several areas that we are introducing. Some of those have already started over the past years, and we are building this stronger and stronger. So there's, for example, the conversational artificial intelligence, where we are making chatbots available to interface with the user, so to make the day-to-day life easier and more intuitive to work with the system. We are also having a lot of innovation in the robotic process automation space, where we have a multitude of automated workflows that again make the day-to-day interaction with the system more easier to deal with. Another area would be the situation handling, where we have automated notifications that trigger certain situations on the system, certain business actions, and this also improves the productivity and efficiency working with the system. Okay. Furthermore, we also have a lot of machine learning that is going to grow more and more over time, where we have a lot of self-learning bots, where the system will automatically learn depending on your entries, on the user entries, and provide better data quality, better actions on the system. Okay, let's move ahead. There's a huge number of such new use cases in S4HANA 2020, and this slide provides a certain overview of that. We will have a dedicated session for that coming up, where one of our team colleagues will also provide a more detailed look into that, and he will also give you a couple of demos around it. So there's a lot of robotic process automation, what you can see at the top, in different business areas, finance, sales, for example, manufacturing, and so on. We also have situation handling capabilities in the finance space, procurement, sales, manufacturing, and more areas. And also finally some in the optimization space, where we have data intelligence with machine learning, for example, in the finance space. There are several links in this deck, and later on, of course, this deck will be shared with you, and you will be able to explore more details around this by following those links. Now moving on to the user experience. This is a very important area for you to work on, and also make the system more intuitive for your end users. I decided to put in a slide here which brings in a quote of one of our executive board members, Thomas Sauer-Essig, where he's saying, "User experience is the cornerstone of user productivity, satisfaction, and adoption, and it is the most important factor in realizing customer value from the intelligent enterprise." The reason why I've included this is because we have seen with some of the implementations that have started on SAP S4HANA with our 15.11 release, 16.10 release, and who are still about to upgrade, they have in some cases just done a technical lifting of the system from SAP ERP to S4HANA. But at the moment, they are not leveraging the actual capabilities of the system in the sense of what are the news, what is the innovation in there. And a lot of this innovation comes through the user experience space. That means through a lot of our new innovation Fiori applications. So it is very important to look into those to get additional value out of the system. Okay, and so let's look at this slide. This slide is showing where you might be on your journey to becoming an intelligent enterprise and leveraging capabilities that come with S4HANA. You might have started more on the left-hand side, where you are on S4HANA, but you're not using SAP Fiori extensively. You're still working in a GUI sort of way, and meaning working with the old transactions, but you're yet to introduce innovation with all those Fiori apps that we have, which is a huge amount meanwhile. And there are more and more coming with every release and even with every feature pack. So once you are becoming a more and more intelligent enterprise, you would be moving up this ladder basically towards the upper right corner of the slide. So you would be starting with doing some showcase innovations. You start with some of those applications, introducing some of the business roles where you have directly some significant business value, and you would grow this coverage over time. And then at some point, on top of those Fiori applications, we could bring in all those intelligent technologies that we have on top. So this would be touching the areas I mentioned earlier: machine learning, situation handling, robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, chatbots, all of those. And those can only work once you have laid the foundation. And the foundation is very important to mention, are not the old SAP transactions. This is legacy. To some extent, we still require it because we're on a journey and we're bringing the system entirely there. But a big amount of it is already there. And we can only highly encourage you to make use of those intelligent technology features. Let's move ahead. Now looking at the business technology platform, how it is accelerating the move to S4HANA, where we also make use of our database capabilities and also the integration capabilities, where we have what we used to call the SAP Cloud Platform, where you integrate and have some flexibility. And that can be from SAP space. It can also be from partner space, where there are additional products being offered. And you have an easier capability, for example, to move your data, extensions. You can also have an integration capabilities, which is, for example, provided through our API Business Hub and the integration suite. You can also do a cleaning of your data. So it's easier to keep the data consistent across your different systems. And this is just an example that we are taking here. And from a food and beverage customer, where they have done a certain integration in this way by all these different components that you can see on the slide. Okay, moving ahead, one more. There's also the capability to optimize S4HANA processes by, for example, leveraging integrated capabilities such as change notifications, also employee self-services that come with the system. Document exchange can be automated through the integration suite, where you're working with different systems. You have to pass information back and forth, workflow capabilities, and so on. So this is all part of this game, let's say. You have this is all coming from for this particular example, from a spirits and beverages customer, where they have been able to do bigger improvements in their sales efficiency and to build up new competencies, and it was faster for them to implement, and they're moving ahead and bringing in more and more and faster also innovation. Okay. Also, another one could be the differentiation with our SAP Business Technology Platform, where you are able to do a faster data entry. You can also do interact with the system with new voice and chat interfaces, for example, through those conversational AI, where you have chatbots which automatically take over part of the work that normally the day-to-day activity would be for your end users. Intelligent document processing, we have the intelligent data classification. You bring in data, it automatically gets classified. We can put it together with other data in the same business area and context area, and we can take some workload, let's say, off of your employees. This example is coming from an utilities customer, where they were also working a lot with mobile applications, mobile invoice reviews, for example, and they were able to streamline their process and make it more integrated and more efficient. Now, just as a brief summary, first of all, we are accelerating and simplifying the migration here. We're moving data and extensions to help it also be cleaner for the data, integration with SAP applications, integration also with third-party applications. We are open to that, and we are optimizing in the next step and automating the business processes through automated approvals, for example, automated processes and so on. And we also have the possibility to work more intelligently with data through intelligent data classification, rapid data entries, and so on. There are different capabilities that we bring in that sense. We have the SAP Extensibility Explorer. That's one of the tools. The SAP API Business Hub, which gives you an overview what sort of APIs we have available, what sort of data you can exchange. We also have the intelligent robotic process automation, which we also call RPA. There's a store for that with several use cases. And we have the SAP Discovery Center. So I would like to encourage you to have a look at those tools. Okay, now we're going to move on. And I would like to tell you how you can get to the latest release of S4HANA. Since the target group of the session is that you would already be using SAP S4HANA, but on lower releases. Now let's learn how you can get to those latest releases. First of all, what I would like to point out is our Activate methodology. You have probably learned about it when you started your journey on S4HANA, but I would like to make clear that there's also updates to this methodology and to the accelerators, the tools that come with it. So we have new accelerators available with the 2020 release. Meanwhile, they have best practices, references updated, and that can also help you on your journey with the upgrade. What is also very important is linked at the bottom here. There's a blog about our best practices guide for upgrades. What we did with this best practices guide for upgrades is we were a team of several people within SAP that also included our team from the regional implementation group. And we put into this guide a couple of lessons learned that we have seen in upgrades where things have gone in the right way or where things could have gone better. And we're pointing out how you can do this the best way. So I would highly encourage you to look at this blog and the referenced guide as well. Okay, another tool that we make available for you is the Innovation and Optimization Pathfinder, where you get recommendations for business scenarios where you can get most value out of the system. So this is a tool I would also encourage you to have a look at. You might have already done so. It also gets updated over time. So have another look on your upgrade journey now. Okay. So yeah, the process discovery for the S4HANA transformation, this is also an important one that you should have a look at. So there's a blog also referenced here that you can have a look at. You would be starting to build a case on business level also and on technology level, of course, underneath. What sort of additional capabilities you can bring in for your end users, for your employees, for your workers, and so on. So also this tool, is a recommendation to have a look at. Okay. Now let's move ahead. How to upgrade on a technical level. So before we looked more into the methodology, how you can identify what you actually want to bring for your business with the upgrade. Now we're looking into the more technical part. How do you lift up the system to finally get to the latest S4HANA release? This is differentiated into different phases. We have a planning phase, we have a preparation phase, and we have a realization phase. First of all, during the planning, you would be doing an impact evaluation. So you would look into the system, what is deployed at the moment. For example, you need to look into deployed add-ons, and you need to make sure that those add-ons are also available on your target release. So talking about the latest release, are those add-ons available also for S4HANA 2020? And if it is a third-party add-on, you need to make sure that the corresponding vendor would have made this available or will make it available. This is one of the activities there, for example. And also, overall, you do your project planning, you see what sort of skill sets are required and so on, and you move for that. Okay, so then in the next step, we have our technical tool, the Maintenance Planner, which is a cloud-based tool. You're probably aware of this. And this is also used for upgrades. You basically generate all the files, a stack XML, and eventually have all files ready for deployment that you will require for the technical execution. We also would be doing another simplification items pre-check. You might remember this if you had been a brownfield customer, having come from an ERP system and having converted that system to S4HANA. You are already familiar with the simplification item checks, and that you had a couple of to-dos in that sense. So this has to be done again also during an upgrade. The impact, of course, will not be by far not as big as what you had back in the days when you moved from ERP to S4HANA, but between the releases, we have done more simplifications. We have simplified more business areas, and that also means we need to look at what you possibly are still running in the old way, which has now some innovation in the latest releases. So you need to be aware of this, and there might be some action items there. And again, don't be worried about this. The efforts involved there are usually way less than what you had with your initial system conversion. Nevertheless, it's important to do so to avoid any surprises later on, side effects and so on. So that is why this needs to be part of the upgrade procedure as well. Once we come to the technical execution, we would then be running our SUM tool, SUM 2.0. That's our software update manager that will technically execute this. And then we have some cross-application and application-specific follow-on activities where you might need some adaptation of coding to be brought into the system that you would have identified during the simplification item checks, during custom code checks. Just to make sure that your extensions are also compatible with the target release. And last but not least, some follow-on activities also for Fiori. So you would typically be bringing in a number of new applications, a number of new Fiori apps that you leverage the new capabilities. And of course, these need to be planned for as well and rolled out. Okay, let's move ahead. Okay, one of the technical activities is also to review your sizing. An upgrade is an excellent opportunity to look into this area as well. Because over time, of course, your usage on the system has grown, and there might be new requirements regarding the technical sizing, what you have on the database, what you have on the application server. So just make sure this is sufficiently sized for your new target, where you might be also rolling out to new business areas, for example, new user groups, and these need to be catered for. There are certain notes for those which are referenced on this slide. Have a look at those, and also make sure that once you do your sizing, that you also look and plan for the Fiori usage and the embedded analytics usage. Okay. The maintenance planner, I've mentioned it briefly. This is our tooling for planning for your upgrade. It's also the tooling that the tool that we use for new implementation, also for conversion. It's a central tool where you analyze your source system and you plan for the target system. So we look at the system with this tool and we see what's deployed and what does this mean for the target release. Are there certain actions required? We might point out, for example, if there's any conflict with add-ons, business functions, industry solutions, and so on. And eventually we will generate a stack XML which has all the files listed that you will require to upgrade technically to the target. We can also do an automatic uninstallation of add-ons. If you started early with S4HANA 15.11, 16.10, this was not available back then. There was some manual actions involved and so on. And now a big number of add-ons which are no longer required can also be automatically uninstalled. This can also be part of this, part of the tool and the execution. There are some new features and a new look to the maintenance planner, as you can see here in this slide. But the procedure for the upgrade is similar as it was before. There's a note around the new features where we have some analytics basically that we are doing around the system, what you have, where you're going to, and so on. And there's also a video that explains those features if you like to have a look at those. Okay. Now moving one step ahead. Looking at the Fiori front-end server that you also have, of course, as part of your S4HANA system, there are a couple of components which we had with the initial release, and those old components are no longer required. So we would need to undeploy them, and there's a note that you need to follow which explains this in more detail. It's referenced here at the bottom of the slide. Make sure this is part of your activities. I already briefly mentioned the add-ons. Add-ons come in two different flavors. They can be co-deployed onto the system itself, inside the S4HANA server, or it can be a side-by-side usage where we're basically integrating with the S4HANA system. In both cases, you need to make sure that the add-on, and specifically for partner add-ons, that they are released for S4HANA and your target release. So if you're going to the latest version, they need to be available for S4HANA 2020. There can be some licensing aspects involved, so make sure you also look into those. And in case it turns out that a specific add-on which is important for you is not available yet for the target release and it's a partner add-on, make sure that you contact that partner well ahead in time so that they have a chance to prepare the add-on accordingly in case that would not have been planned for on their side and so on. Okay. Business functions is also an important area, so that goes typically hand in hand with the add-ons. We also need to look into the business functions. You need to check if a business function was switched off in the source release, but if it is now defined as always on, then it would be activated during the upgrade, for example. There's also a note around this. There's a couple of notes actually, and those are the two most important ones that are referenced here, and they will take you to more information around it. Make sure you also look into that area. Okay, looking into integration. So you might not be running your S4HANA system on its own, but it has some integration with other systems where data is being exchanged. So you need to make sure that this is being catered for. And this is also looked into with regression testing. So make sure your regression testing is planned accordingly. You should also validate the version interoperability between the S4HANA system and your integrated NetWeaver systems. There's an SAP note for that, which comes with an attachment, and the attachment details which versions are supported or respectively no longer supported and so on. If it's no longer supported, then it could mean that your integrated NetWeaver solution also requires an upgrade. Having said that, meanwhile, most customers would be on sufficiently high NetWeaver releases, so we don't see this as a bigger issue during upgrades. There's also a central SAP Landscape Recommendations wiki. I would recommend to have a look at that as well. And also, you might want to use our Upgrade Dependency Analyzer tool. That can also automate doing some of those checks, whether an integration is supported or whether it might not be supported. Okay. So in essence, it means that we need to have the integrated systems on NetWeaver release 7.5. Until last year, it was possible to run certain versions up till 7.31, 7.4, but this has gone out of maintenance meanwhile. So you need to have your integrated system on 7.5. make sure that this is being catered for. And as mentioned, it is also detailed in this note displayed here, 2251604. Okay. It comes with a list. This is just a short listing of what is in that list. So you can see certain minimum compatible releases for your NetWeaver systems and also for other application solutions here. If you're integrating with CRM, supply chain management, extended warehouse management, and so on, there are certain minimum releases. And there is one node for each release. So if you're going to the latest S4HANA release, which we would, of course, recommend, then you look at the node at the bottom here, 2974130. Okay. Regarding integration with our cloud solutions, or let's say our solutions, or can also be third party, you would also want to look if there's any change in the integration techniques because of the release version. There's one example listed here, for example, starting from in the content integration gateway approach. So if there's any dependency at that end. You can also look into our simplified bar piece APIs, the simplification item list basically, and you should also look into the SAP API Hub, which will tell you if there's any changes with the APIs, maybe additional capabilities, where you can also extend the integration. Okay, let's look at operating system and HANA database recommendations to see what's the recommended and released application server platforms, and that will have reference with the operating system. It's very important that you have a supported operating system underneath. What we have SUSE Linux 12 release and S4HANA 2020, they will also have to upgrade the SUSE release to version 15, for example, SUSE Linux 15 enterprise server, because that is simply a requirement there, as 12 is no longer supported. So this is just an example. Make sure you also support it on the operating system level, and also in your upgrade project planning that you plan this sufficiently, that this is not a surprise last minute. Oh, we also need to upgrade the operating system there, because that, of course, can take a little bit of time as well. Okay, if you are on one of our lowest S4HANA releases, then you will also have to upgrade your HANA version, if you haven't done it yet, to be on HANA 2.0 and one of the latest revisions. That's also important to remember. Regarding the upgrade to HANA 2.0, there's an SAP note for that, mentioned here as the first note. And also for S4HANA 2020, it is important to know that you need to be at least on HANA 2.0 SPS 5 revision 50. That's the minimum, but typically the latest projects that have gone live on the latest S4HANA 2020 version would typically be on revision 52, just as an additional remark here. We also have our end of mainstream maintenance for HANA 1.0 and for HANA 2.0 SPS 4 coming up at end of June. So this is also important to remember, and you need to get your HANA version upgraded as well. There's a couple of information links below, the HANA update guide, and also a couple of notes that will help you plan for this activity. Okay, for the revision level, just a couple of recommendations around that space. It is not necessarily always the highest revision number. That would be the most recommended one. So you would typically look into the note, which is mentioned here, 2655761. That would point out what's the recommended revision. And if you happen to have a support incident where our support would say, okay, no, you need a different revision, obviously that will overrule whatever is stated in that note. Yeah. So what our support would say is then the version that you should be on. Also make sure that you check the HANA parameter recommendations, where we have a couple of check scripts that are frequently being updated. That's part of the note 260030. And those check scripts will detect your HANA version, what sort of products you're running on it, of course S4HANA in that case, and give you recommendations. Okay, let's look into the architecture for the Fiori front-end server. There is an important change that was made with since 1709, since S4HANA 1709, where we know from that point on, we no longer recommend that you have a separate deployment of the Fiori front-end server, but we rather recommend that you have it as an integrated deployment and running an embedded front-end server. So in case you're still running your front-end server separate, we encourage you to change this and to make it an embedded front-end server to run basically on the same server as the S4HANA application server itself. This is different compared to what would be in the old SAP ERP business suite, where we would still be recommending the standalone, but that's not valid for S4HANA, where it should be an embedded deployment. This has a couple of technical reasons, and it will help you also with configuration that you can do, for example, Fiori rapid content activation, where we can, in an automated way, activate business roles with Fiori content. So in case you were struggling with 1511, with 1610, to activate Fiori apps, because there are quite a number of steps involved, a lot of this is automated meanwhile. So this is much easier to do. And to be able to do so, you need to have an embedded front-end server. If you have a more complex scenario with all the solutions that you're using, it might be also worth considering running our Cloud Platform Central Launchpad, where you would have one entry point to the S4HANA content, but also to integrated cloud content coming from other products. For that one. Okay. Now, if you're already running S4HANA and you already have Fiori also in usage, there's a couple of important areas that you should look into. What would have changed in the Fiori space and what sort of adaptations you might require, which is detailed in the block, which is pointed out here, the first block. And there's also a block talking about how you can find deprecated and successor apps. So typically, of course, when we roll out an app, we are not planning to replace it, but for certain cases, it was necessary to do so because of certain business side or technical implications. So there could be a successor app for an already used app, which was the relevant app in 1511, 1610, but meanwhile it is deprecated. So make sure that you've also checked this list, which you can find out by following the second block here. If you are not using Fiori yet, as I already mentioned previously, and Henrik did as well, we highly encourage you to do so. It is very important to make use of those Fiori apps because this is a big part of how we are delivering the innovation. So meanwhile, there's more than 2,000 Fiori apps, and more will be delivered with each release. And on top of those Fiori apps, that's where we're building up the intelligent use cases as well, where we have machine learning, chatbots, integration, and so on. So this is the base and the foundation which you will require now and even more in the future also to leverage the latest capabilities that we bring out and where we make your business more efficient. Okay, so once again, if you haven't started yet, now is definitely the time to definitely get started with it. So have a look at the latest version of our Fiori Lighthouse scenarios. These are typically quick win scenarios where your business will immediately benefit a lot by and in inefficiency and so on by rolling out those applications. Have a look at that document. You can also have a look for potential new apps by assessing also the delta of new apps between the different versions. There's a link to a blog here, which is also explaining that in more detail. And you can also look into configuration and extension of apps. There's some new features available in that space as well. A couple of links here as well, also around the rapid content activation that I mentioned, which makes it more easier to activate a set of Fiori apps. And you don't have to run through all the manual activities that you had to do back in 15.11, 16.10. That has changed massively meanwhile, so it's much easier for you to do. There will be a lot more detail about this in our user experience session, which will be delivered by our colleague Jocelyn Dart. Okay, let's have a brief look at the simplification item checks again. Once again, we might have introduced new innovation for other business areas that were not affected with 15.11, 16.10, or any other of the early releases. So make sure you run this check again to see where's the delta and where you might have some impact also on your custom code, and adapt for it and prepare for it accordingly. How to run those? The simplification item checks you would typically run in client 000. Best is to run them in the background. These notes, which are mentioned here, are updated periodically. So make sure that after you have done your initial testing and so on, at some point you freeze that version, so that you're not later on, once you do it on QA and production, have to upgrade that version, because then there would be a mismatch between the initial development check and then QA and production. It's the same story that you might be aware of if you've come from a system conversion. Any red item has to be resolved. Yellow items are warnings. You should look into those as well. But in many cases, it's it has an impact, but the impact can possibly be also dealt with later on. But red alerts are definitely required to be resolved before you do your upgrade. Okay. We also have some extension on the software update manager, where we have an extended prerequisites check, where we do have additional checks regarding the operating system database version. We look for inactive objects, and we also do a check on the simplification item checks. So this would also, at that stage latest, warn you that you might not be able to go ahead in case you have red alert items. But it's good practice to run it separately before. Just run through this slightly faster. Okay. On the finance side, there might be some impact. Look at the first note that is mentioned here. And essentially, it means that if you are on 15.11 still and going to any further release that was coming up afterwards, and you're also running actual costing for at least one plant, then you need to follow the corrections and instructions that are provided in that second note mentioned here. This is only relevant if you are still on 15.11 and you're also having actual costing activated. Then there's another implication if you are on 15.11, 16.10, or 17.09, and you're going to any of the subsequent releases, and you're making use of manual accruals, and you want to continue doing so after the upgrade, then there's also a couple of steps that you need to follow, and for that you follow the third note that is mentioned on this slide. Keep those in mind as well and discuss this with your finance team. Okay, coming to custom code. You're coming from an S4HANA lower release, you're going to a higher release, and there might be changes required for your custom code. That is, for example, because we might have some areas which had not been simplified before in the early releases, but that have meanwhile been simplified. And if you have extension in that space, you might require some adaptations. So it's necessary that you look into those again as well. How to analyze your custom code? You would typically start in a similar way like you did back then when you did your system conversion. You do a custom code evaluation and the usage tracking. You can use our ABAP call monitor, transaction SCMon, or you can also use our UPL, the usage procedure logging. You would activate it to see if your custom code is actually being used. There's no need to adapt code which is no longer being used because it's legacy code. So make sure you know what code is still active and relevant. And then you will have to plan accordingly, analyze this with the ABAP test cockpit, run a couple of checks there, and adapt it accordingly. We also have a new Fiori custom code migration app, which was not available in the early releases, which helps you visualize the results from the ABAP test cockpit and makes your planning easier for what needs to be adapted, who should be adapt the code, and so on. In the ABAP test cockpit, in your development environment in Eclipse, there's also the possibility to run the checks directly from there. That I would like to point out here. There's also the option to do some quick fixes directly there. That can also make your life easier. So also make sure that you have looked into this sufficiently. And now coming to Fiori, there are different development areas affected. We have ABAP, we have CDS, Core Data Services views, and we also have the UI layer on top of it, the UI5 layer, the JavaScript layer, and each of them might require adaptations where necessary. Okay. Now for the CDS remediation, we would recommend that you create a copy of the variant of the S4HANA Readiness 2020 check. And then you go into transaction SCI, you define the object set accordingly, and you analyze the incidents that come up, that are being thrown, where there's an impact, and you work accordingly to resolve them. Okay, the SAP Solution Manager can also help you in that area with our scope and effort analyzer, where the solution manager is analyzing your current S4HANA system, the source release, where we get certain usage statistics, and we can then derive some results, what needs to be done on the system. It also can help you to a certain extent with your project planning and the execution. So you first look at the left-hand side here, you have the scope and effort analyzer, which gives you an inventory of our updated SAP objects. It will also categorize them depending on component hierarchy, object types, and so on. We also have some information about the adjustment effort for your code, what business processes will be impacted by the upgrade, and so on. So this is an additional possibility. It's not a must, but it makes your life easier if you also leverage those solution manager capabilities, the scope and effort analyzer. Okay, couple of details around this summarized here. We have a simple guided procedure in the solution manager to work with this tool. Again, we're looking into the custom code and modifications, and we also can facilitate the test management around it. Okay. This is as far as I can go in the context of this session. Of course, this is a more complex topic, and you might want to look into more details for this scope and effort analyzer separately. Okay, authorizations, a brief look at that. There can be new or changed authorizations because of new Fiori applications or because of changes in Fiori applications, changes in catalogs assignments. There can be a requirement of additional authorizations on data extracts. For example, the way how you're extracting the data on the CDS views, there might be some impact there. So make sure you also check your authorizations accordingly during your testing. Dual maintenance might be required depending how long you can possibly pause your active developments, because obviously once you lift up your development environment to S4HANA 2020, to the latest release, you can no longer roll out developments for the older releases because there can be mismatches in APIs and so on. So that would not be a good idea to do so. If you require that, you should run a parallel environment. To avoid most of this, you typically would start with a sandbox copy of production. You lift that one up, you run a cookbook, you write down what exactly has been changed, what exactly requirements you have for the changes to do the upgrade, and only then you start with development, QA, and so on. So that can minimize the effort there, and it helps you also estimate how long you might not have your current development environment available, to avoid possibly to run a dual maintenance. Okay. Downtime optimization. So once you run a sandbox approach first, and you run a first upgrade, and you realize maybe that the downtime, because of your database size, the downtime is too long, then you can also look into optimizing the downtime. So typically in the standard approach, we have an uptime on the original instance. At some point, we enter the downtime and re-enter downtime. Okay, we have some tooling here, which we call near zero downtime maintenance, that can help you reduce this, where we're basically shortening the downtime by moving certain parts of it into uptime. We also have our zero downtime optimization, ZDO, where we are taking literally almost everything from downtime into uptime. Yeah, so that's of course the biggest shortening of your downtime. Okay. So which approach to take? Of course, there's different validations that you should go through. You need to see what's the impact. So you first do a test run, to keep it short here. First you do a test run, you see how long is the downtime. If the downtime is acceptable, you would go ahead with the standard approach. Because anything that involves reducing the downtime will of course mean also more effort. And that effort has to be prepared for, has to be planned for, has to be tested for, and so on. If you require a shorter downtime, then you would first of all be looking into NZDM, near zero downtime maintenance. And this is generally available. It's meanwhile generally available. In case you heard about it before and it was not generally available, it meanwhile is. Yeah, it requires a certain minimum database release, and it comes integrated into our software update manager tool. So what we're doing there is we have a certain record and replay technique where we're seeing, okay, what is required during the upgrade procedure itself, what we do in the downtime, and we will analyze what parts of those can possibly be moved into the uptime. So we use this record and replay, and the idea is to have as little as necessary manual effort here. Okay. There are some notes around it. Make sure you check those if you're planning to use it, and that you're aware of what's the implications there. The zero downtime optimization, that's a pilot program. There's a note for that, which is also mentioned here. And what we're doing there is basically to try to lift literally almost everything from downtime to uptime. Because this is more complex, this requires SAP services involvement, because we need to safeguard that there's no negative impact on your business data, business operations, and so on. Okay. Let me go through that as well. It's only available for certain paths here. So you would check the note, and the note will tell you which paths are supported. And then, again, this would require SAP services involvement. You would be sketching out a plan. You copy your production to Sandbox. You validate it, and you prepare a cookbook. That cookbook gets refined in your development environment. Then you run this on quality to address rehearsal and bring this onto production. Once again, this is more complex then. So you would only do this if you have the requirement and the downtime would otherwise be too long. We also have the possibility to do an impact analysis. There are those two nodes, one for near zero downtime maintenance and one for the zero downtime optimization. You might want to have a look at that as well. It takes a look at your database tables, the sizes of each of the database tables, and what sort of possible impact we can have there and how we could shorten. Cutover preparations. Of course, you would always keep track of, from your previous upgrade experiences, what sort of activities might have been important. You want to include those as well into the planning for your S4HANA upgrade. You simulate the cutover activities, and for example, on the technical side, you make sure you have your standard mandatory jobs scheduled and configured. You need to make sure that the new CDS views have been activated. The operational team needs to know what's the delta, what has changed, what new tooling is available. Backups need to have been scheduled. Of course, if you're running high availability, which of course in most cases you would, you need to make sure this has been tested also regarding failover testing. Support connections need to be open. All of those, make sure this has been catered for accordingly. Brief recap here, a couple of key takeaways. Make sure you know the roadmap viewer. Make sure you know our upgrade guide. This is the standard document that describes what is required for an S4HANA upgrade. And on top of that, there is this best practice guide, which has been prepared by a multitude of experts from SAP, from our support, also from our regional implementation group. And they give you additional hints based on our lessons learned, what is important during upgrade, what you should not forget. I think that will be very helpful for you. And also make sure that you implement some more Fiori during the upgrade. This is key to leveraging the innovation and to make your company more efficient. It's very important. Also, we recommend that you typically aim for the latest available S4HANA release. There's no need to go for a release -1. This is, let's say, different compared to how IT was done 15 years, 20 years back. The latest releases are stable, they are tested. Especially once you have the latest release and then a feature pack on it on top, then that should be the release that you should go for. So now we have S4HANA 2020 available with FPS 1, and that should be the release that you should be planning your upgrade to. You should run the maintenance planner early so that you know what's the impact on add-ons, business functions, and take required actions. Make sure your NetWeaver in integration scenarios is on the required release. As I mentioned, it must be 7.5. You should also consider moving to an embedded Fiori front-end server deployment, as that will facilitate your rapid content activation. You should revisit your sizing to make sure the system is sufficiently capable of the capacity that it requires for your new scenarios. And you might require dual maintenance, depending on how long you can live with your development environment, if it has been upgraded already. And also revise the HANA database, which revision is there, maybe upgrade that accordingly. And also make sure you run the simplification item check and custom code adaptation again. This is the best practices guide for upgrades. There are some blocks around it also describing and pointing out a couple of areas in the guide. Have a look at it. We are currently busy updating the document as well. So in a couple of weeks, you will probably see a new version of it. Which takes me to the end of the presentation. And now we can look into your questions. There's a tool in this platform in the ON24, and you would have been able to submit a couple of questions. Let's see what we have there. I can see a question, Hendrik, that I think will be for you. And
yes. So the question at the moment, also the first one was in supply chain till SMC 7.0. We have SNP with optimizer, which will be used for production planning. In SAP S4HANA, where is this module? So first of all, key thing is we're not necessarily moving features and functions one-to-one from other systems into SAP S4HANA. For this specific one, the functionality we had in SAP APO, SMP capabilities are partially made available in SAP IBP for response and supply. And that has been documented in the SAP note 24568834. And it's called Transition Guide for SAP APO. So again, you would find it in SAP IBP, this capability. And next question. There's a question found for SAP S4HANA 2020 upgrade is compatible for add-on OpenText 16.0. I'm not sure exactly the version number, I have to admit, but to my knowledge, OpenText should be at this stage be compatible for 2020. But I guess we would need to take a very detailed look at the exact OpenText functionality.
Correct. Just make sure you double check this note that I had mentioned about add-ons. If you go into that note, it has a reference of compatible add-ons, and it also lists the version. And as far as I remember, I think 16 is supported, but just have a look and cross-check this with our list there. That will give you the final answer on this.
Okay, I guess the next one is more for you, Thomas.
Can we move directly from 1610 to 2020? First of all, yes, you can do that. You can go from any lower release directly to the latest version. There's a direct upgrade path. Then the next question there is also confirm, as we have BW for HANA integrated with S4HANA. Should we upgrade BW for HANA as well? This is not required. You should look into your integration scenarios, but in general, there's no direct dependency with BW for HANA. So, but it might depend on the detail, what exact integration, data extraction you might be using. So, typically not, but analyze this in a bit more detail depending on your requirements. Okay, let's move to the next one. Is it necessary to move to embedded Fiori frontend server when moving to S4HANA 2020, starting from 1709? Regarding the embedded Fiori frontend server, this is not a hard requirement, let's say. We do support also a standalone Fiori deployment still, but our recommendation is that you have it embedded. And again, one of the major benefits is that you can then do, for example, the rapid content activation, which makes it much easier and faster to activate business roles content. So we do recommend it. It's not necessary, but it's very much recommended. Okay. Then let's move to the next one. My SAP database release is 2.00.3707. and S4HANA is 1709. What action do you recommend for these versions? Well, you would look into what's the latest recommended database revision for your target release. So you would be going, I suppose, to 2020. That's what we recommend, the latest release. And that also means that you then will have to upgrade your database typically. So you would have to look into details there, as per the slides that I had shown around. Okay, next one. If we use scope and effort analyzer, then the readiness check is not required. No, that's not entirely correct. So the scope and effort analyzer in Solution Manager facilitates your life there, and it triggers a couple of those checks as well. So basically, the scope and effort analyzer will execute some of those readiness checks as well, but we recommend that you run those as well. But let me make one thing clear. There is no readiness check for upgrades. What we have as checks are the simplification item checks. Yeah, you run the simplification item checks. We do have a tentative planning, and as with all disclaimers as usual from SAP, we might have some readiness check for upgrades available later this year. But as of now, the readiness check is for conversions. Regarding upgrades, you need to look into the simplification item checks. Okay, then let's look into the next one. Hello, we upgraded our sandbox system from 1709 to 2020 SP1, where the ISM and ISH component got removed on 2020 without notification on simplification item check and SUM. As we were using some function modules from ISM, there was some failed. Yeah, okay, there's a bit on the functional side. I'm not sure, Hendrik, can we answer that?
I would need to take a look. We would need to take a look. I don't think we can answer it right away here. As we don't know why certain things at the moment were then not visible. We would need to investigate. So sorry, we can't answer the question right away.
Yeah, so typically it should have been pointed out in the simplification item check. So I wonder what has been going on there. In that case, we would recommend that you open a support ticket for further clarification. Okay, let's move on to the next one. What is the price factor for upgrading? Is there any price upgrade in AMC? Hendrik, can you help me? AMC, what does that stand for?
I'm not sure. Is that present in A?
So typically the upgrade does not come with additional pricing. It just might have some impact on your integration solutions. So if something is integrated where there is some, a difference then in licensing, that can have an impact, but not on the S4HANA system itself. But we are not aware what AMC is. If you want, just put another quick question where you clarify that. Okay, is there any implication for activating all the Fiori apps at one go? Will there be a resource constraint? Theoretically, you could activate all Fiori apps through the rapid activation, but we recommend that you do this based on business roles. So the business roles that you require, those apps you activate. This is also because of security considerations, because we do not want to activate apps and also required OData services and so on when they're not really being used. So from that perspective, we would not recommend to activate all if you are not using all of them. Okay, next one. What's the version of MDG that we need to be on for S4HANA 2020? You need to look into that integration note that I mentioned earlier. That would detail that. Okay, can we directly move from 1709 to 1909? Yes, you can. Again, any path there from a lower to the higher version is supported. We would recommend you don't go to 1909, but directly to the latest version, 2020. Can we upgrade ECC6 to S4HANA directly? Going from ECC6 to S4HANA, that's a system conversion. That is not an upgrade, and that requires additional considerations. Yeah, so you cannot do an upgrade. That would be what we call a system conversion, and you need to look into the corresponding documentation. Okay, next one. We tried the scope and effort analyzer earlier, but the modification shown was different in SPD and SPAU phase. Yeah, our team is not the very expert on this scope and effort analyzer. I would recommend you also open a ticket for that. This needs to be looked into by our solution manager colleagues. Okay, and one more question. What if we're simply not going to upgrade? Well, if you're not going to upgrade, then you're going to fall short on the latest innovation on the business side, on the Fiori applications, on intelligent technology capabilities, machine learning, and so on. And this will sooner or later give you a competitive disadvantage. Okay, next one. If we choose the near zero downtime process, whom we should contact for getting it done? So the NZDM is in general availability. If you need to go for the very big downtime optimization, the zero downtime optimization, there was a note for it. Just follow that note. That will also give instructions who and how you need to reach out to get this scheduled. Once again, for zero downtime optimization, this requires an SAP services involvement. I think that's all we have, or is there
And we are on the top of the hour as well, Thomas.
Absolutely. So I think we probably have to wrap up the session. Unless there's any last minute question, this is your last chance before we have to close the session. Doesn't seem like. And yeah, that would lead then to the end of the session. And I would like to thank you very much for attending the session. Yeah, thanks for participating, and I wish you all the best for your upgrade, and maybe you will be in contact with one or another from our team, from the customer care and regional implementation group there, to possibly facilitate your upgrade. Thank you very much. Thanks, Hendrik, as well.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.